In this video, I'm going to talk about some of the differences between C++ and Python. In the future, every student taking this class will have already seen Python, and I assume a lot of you had Python for your first class. But there are still some students who that was not a requirement, and they took C++ for their first language. So therefore, some of you have had a whole semester of Python, some of you may have never seen it, okay? So I think it's worthwhile talking about some of the differences between the two languages, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and pop up. I have another video out there on the tools we're going to be using, so hopefully you've taken a look at that, okay? So this is PyCharm, and it's the IDE that I'm going to be using for the examples. Again, it doesn't really matter much which IDE you use. You're still going to, I mean, Python's Python. Versions are a thing, but we'll talk more about that as we go along, okay? So I think the first difference, and I'll just type some things in here that may not make a lot of sense to the interpreter, is that Python is an interpreted language versus C++, which is a compiled language, okay? So that means basically, when you write a C++ program, you have to run it through, and if you've taken the GCC compiler, and it turns it into an executable program, you can then run that executable program without anything else, okay? Python works differently in that the program that you create will run or will be interpreted line by line as you're running it. So it never gets turned into a standalone executable, okay? So that's one of the big differences. It allows us, and we'll talk more in class, that you can have the terminal view or the Python interpreter window where you can program interactively in ways that you can't with C++, okay? I think the other thing that is sure to drive you insane when you move from C++ is that in Python, spaces are everything, okay? In C++, spacing optional is optional. You can space it however you like, okay? But if I run something and just a simple print command here, and we'll talk more about the syntax later, and I'll certainly point you to some resources for that. If I do something like that, okay, in Python, and try to run it, okay, let me run this one. It may not show what runs. So yeah, what up here? Yeah, I get this indentation error, unexpected indent. You can't do that, okay? The other thing that you'll notice is that unlike C++, Python does not have a semicolon at the end, okay? Again, those two things are connected. It's because we use spacing and line breaks to set up the structure of something. It means that we know where the end of the line is. We don't have to put a semicolon there, okay? So that's one of the big things that will make you a little bit crazy. And then to look at something like how the spacing makes a difference, let's do, and again, we'll do more detail later. We're going to do iteration here, okay? So we don't have the traditional kind of for loop, okay? Instead, we're going to do something like for x in range. Let's see, range is going to return a range of numbers, starting at 0, going up to, but not including the one at the end, okay? To denote a compound statement, I put a colon at the end, okay? And then from there, see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Looks like I can. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. So it's colon, not a semicolon. It indents for me automatically. And then everything within here is going to be within. So I can print, Bob, doesn't matter. Okay. All of that is within my loop. Okay. If I hit the backspace key and print Alice down here, okay, then Alice is not in that loop. Okay, that's how we show loop membership. Okay, so let's see what we've got here. Okay, so you see this is ran. It goes 0 Bob, 1 Bob, 2 Bob, and so forth, all in the loop. It only prints 1 Alice. Okay, so this is how we show membership inside of something, any of the loops that we have, when you define a function, any of those things, okay? I think the other thing that's going to be different for you is that Python is not a strongly typed language, okay? which means that in C++, we have to do something like int x, semicolon, okay? Has no meaning in Python. In Python, we would just say x is equal to 10, okay? When I say x equals 10, that infers that x is an integer, okay? In fact, I think if I can remember, is it type of x, maybe? I don't know. There's a way to do that. Looks like type of is incorrect. Maybe it's type of, maybe it's type, looks like type. Let's see if that works. Type of x. Let's see if this works. Yes, that's it, type. So right now, x is an int, okay? But note that there's nothing special about that. I can now later say x is equal to Joe. I can find the E key, okay? X is equal to Joe, okay? And then print the type of X, okay? In most languages that we have in the world, this would absolutely cause the world to end, okay? But in this case, there's no problem. At this point, at line 3, what's the type of X? It's an integer. At line 6, what's the type of X? It's a string. Okay, so that really is a big difference. Okay, and depending on the Python version, and this has been a change in Python, and you can always make it behave this way. There's no real upper range to your integers. Okay, that you can your integers or whatever number you're doing can be as big as they want. There's no arbitrary length. Because in C++, you're given 8 bits or 8 bytes or whatever your interpreter says as the maximum size for an integer. Long ints are bigger and things like that. Well, Python will take all the memory you have, so you can get very large numbers very quickly. Okay. Again, with some of the later versions of Python, that's no longer turned on by default, but you can make it be that way. Okay. So programming in Python, if you're from a C++, is going to take a little bit of an effort. Okay. If you're taking a class where you're programming in C++ and Python, you're going to make yourself crazy a little bit. I'm teaching data structures in C++ and this Python course. So you will see me break into C++ code or put a semicolon sometimes. If it's in class, just yell at me and I'll fix it. If it's on the video, then I'll have to change that as I go. But it's a different mindset. The languages are similar, but in some ways they're very different. So again, another difference to Python is that, and I think this is the reason Python has become so popular, is that Python has a bunch of very powerful data structures built in. Okay, in particular, we're going to talk about lists, we're going to talk about tuples, we're going to talk about dictionaries or associative arrays, things like that. Okay, so as we go along, we're going to be utilizing those. I think in many cases, especially in Python, the question to ask before starting a program, what data structure am I going to use to hold my data? And then you build that and then build the rest of the program around that. Okay. The other thing that's important about Python, which has led to it being the #1 language used by most surveys that I've seen for the last bunch of years, okay, is the Python packages. Okay, you have a whole bunch of Python packages built in. So the language does some things, certainly, for sure. There's some built-in that come with it all the time, like the math library. There's a string library. It seems like there's a bunch of libraries that we'll talk about as we go. But in addition, there's this framework and this whole package ecosystem, okay, where we can just go through and do all kinds of libraries, okay? So we'll be talking at some point about, and again, if you're using PyCharm, all I had to do was go to the bottom under Python packages, okay, and type in NumPy, or I like to call it NumPy because I'm a goofball, but NumPy is a numerical, it does a lot of matrices, things like that. It's a very well used library in data science, okay, and other things as well. So you can just go there, you can click on it, you can click on install package, and hopefully that works. Yeah, now it's installing. Okay. But there's just lots and lots and lots of packages that are out there that we'll talk about. Okay. So that's the other thing about Python. Okay. So why do we do C++? Okay, so that's another question you can ask. C++ remains the basic language of computer science. If you go to graduate school in computer science, it's just assumed that you know C and C++, and C is very similar to C++. Okay, and it remains the case. C++ has remained popular because it allows low-level access to the computer. You have pointers, you have direct memory access. Another difference with Python, Python does not have direct memory access. Okay, you can't have user or programmer defined pointers in Python. Okay, it's not a thing. Doesn't work. Okay, like you can in C++. Of course, there are pointers, but they're internal. Okay, so that's it. That's the overview. We'll talk more detail on the syntax. I'll have some resources for those if you haven't done Python. We'll take the first bit of class moving pretty quickly, since you do know C++ at least for this class. But this is just particularly for those that are coming from C++, some of the differences that you're likely to run into. If you have any questions, as always, make sure that you let me know. So let me stop that. Yes.